All right, this is lesson 5.3. 5.3, just in case. So it's solving trigonometric equations. So as we kind of talked through this, you've been working on identities and like how they work and how to sub in and replace, right? So now what you're going to do is you're going to actually solve problems, okay? Solve them, but you're going to use your circle most of the time. Most of the time you'll use this circle. That's the way to solve these. I wish we would have laminated them before you went home for these couple weeks, but it's okay. They're not being carried around too much. All right, so for instance, if we're solving a problem, and the problem is 2 sine theta equals, or plus 1 equals 0. So first off, what do? We're trying to solve for theta, so how do we solve for theta? All right, so we first off move -1 over, -1, right? So 2 sine theta equals -1. Divide by 2, sine theta equals -1/2. Okay, so everybody agree with that, correct? So go to your little chart and find sine -1/2. So where is sine -1/2? At 11 pi over 6 and 7 pi over 6. So your answer to this question is at those 2 spots. And it's not just those 2 spots, it's at those 2 spots plus every time n times 2. So remember, this is the number of times it goes in a circle times a full circle, correct? So your answer, there's multiple answers. These are the first 2 that are on the initial card, but it can be any one that is 11 pi over 6 plus n2 pi. It can be any of those. So these are the 2 main answers that you're going to get from looking at your book. But it can be any one like that. All right, good. Let's try another one. All right, so let's try another one. All right. 6 minus tangent 2x equals tangent squared. All right, so 6 minus tangent squared equals tangent squared. So what do we do first? Add tangent squared. Cancel. 6 equals 2 tangent squared x. Divide by 2, tangent squared x equals 1/3. Right? Now what do? Well, I have to do what? I'm sorry, not 1/3, 3. Man, I reversed it. 3. Square root. Tan x equals plus or minus the square root of 3. So what are your options? Where is tangent on here, the square root of 3? So those are pi over 3. It's plus or minus, so it's going to be 4 answers. So plus pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, right? 2 pi over 3, 4 pi over 3, and 5 pi over 3. Right? Okay? Which ones are positive and which ones are negative? This one's negative. This one's negative. I'm sorry. This one's negative. This one's positive. So either way, those are your answers for the questions. All right? Any questions? Good. So let's do another one. So basically what we're doing is you're just plugging in and then you're using your table to solve for your answers, okay? All right, next one. Sine squared plus cosine x equals 1. All right, plus 1, I was right, equals 0. So now, what do I do first? First step. Right? Combine some terms here, possibly. Bring some terms around, right? So what do? First off, what can sine be replaced with? Remember, the idea is you're plugging in, right? So if I have it, sine squared equals 1 minus cosine squared x. Okay? So I can plug that in. If I plug that in, 1 minus cosine squared x plus cosine x plus 1 equals 0. Now what do I do? Rearrange, right? This is going to be cosine squared x plus cosine x plus 2 equals 0. Now what? Cosine x, okay, minus 1 plus 2. So now what? So think about this for a second. Can I solve these? This now in terms of equals 0, this one in terms of 0. So it's going to be cosine x minus 1 equals 0. And we'll solve this one over here. Cosine x plus 2 equals 0. So let's solve this one first. What do? Add 1 to both sides. Cosine x equals 1. So when on our chart, our cosine x equal to 1. And that answer is, anybody? Pi. Good. X equals pi. Good. Cosine's 1. I'm sorry, cosine's 1, positive 1, right? Uh-oh, I made him. All right, so let's see, hold on a second, I made a boo-boo. All right, okay, so, because I need to get rid of this, I lost my negative sign. So when we do it, we lost your negative sign, so you have to come back through. This is negative, so in order to do this, you have to make this positive, this negative, that's going to change my signs to negative. So this is going to be positive, this is going to be negative. So when I do that, it's going to give me negative 1, so that's why it's pi, not what should have been 0. Now, what would that one be? Cosine x equals 2, right? Well, do we have an answer for that? Not really, right? And so therefore, your answer is, there's no real solution. There's no solution here. But there is a solution here, and that's our answer, okay? Okay, so any questions on that? All right, so let's try another one. So, makes sense? Sorry about the misconception, lost my minus sign. Okay, so no solution, and then a real solution. Okay, next. 2 tangent x sine x equals square root of 2 tangent x. All right, so what are we going to do first? What's our first step? Bring it over, right? Make it equal 0. So 2 tan x sine x minus square root of 2 tan x equals 0. Now, remember, anytime you have something like this, first thing you can do is take out like terms. Tan x equals, parentheses, 2 sine x minus square root of 2 equals 0. So, what are our two options? If we break this apart, think about it, two options. Tan x equals 0, one option. Second option is 2 sine x minus the square root of 2 equals 0. So this one's pretty easy. When is tangent equal to 0? When is tangent equal to 0? There's two times. At 0 and at pi. At 0 and at pi. Okay? Alright, so there's your two answers so far. What about this one? Can this be worked out? Sure it can. Watch. Add square root of 2, add square root of 2. 2 sine x equals square root of 2. Divide by 2, sine x equals square root of 2 over 2. So, when on our little diagram is sine square root of 2 over 2? So our answers are pi over 4 and 3 pi over 4. Okay, so we have, in this case, you have 4 answers that will work graphically for our equation, because those are your zeros, essentially. All right? Any questions about how we would do this? Give you a second to kind of write that down in case you want to follow along. So we'll do two more, just to kind of make sure that you understand this process. All right, so let's do another one here. Three cosecant x minus sine x equals 2. Okay, so first step, what do we do? What's another way of writing this? What's another way of writing this? So this would be 3 over sine x minus sine x equals 2, right? So what's the next step? I gotta get the sine x out of the basement, right? In order to do work here. So multiply by sine x. When I do that, I have to multiply the whole thing through with that. So that gives me 3 minus sine squared x equals 2 sine x. Now what do I do? Bring it over, right? Okay, so minus 2 sine x. So I'm left with 3 minus sine squared x minus 2 sine x equals 0. And now what do I do? Next, rearrange and change my signs. Minus sine x squared minus 2 sine x plus 3 equals 0. So I got to change my signs. Plus, plus, minus. And I'm left with sine squared x plus 2 sine x minus 3 equals 0. Now what do I do? Well, I got to break it apart, right? Sine x, sine x. So let's see. I need to get a 2 in the middle, right? So it's going to be plus 3 minus 1. Plus 3 minus 1. So work out our problems. So individually, sine x minus 1 equals 0, plus 1, plus 1. Sine x equals 1, x equals what? When sine is 1, what are our answers? Pi over 2. Okay, straight up. What about this one? Sine x plus 3 equals 0, minus 3, sine x equals negative 3. So what are our answers? No solution. We have our solution. Here it is. All right. Okay, any questions on that? All right, so let's try one more, solving a multiple angle equation. So this is going to be a little more difficult. I'm going to add just a tiny bit to it, this is what you would do. All right, here we go. 2 cosine 3x equals square root of 3. Okay, so first off, what do we do? All right, we're going to get cosine 3x equals square root of 3 over 2. All right, so that's pretty simple, straight. That in itself is pretty easy, correct? So what would this be on our thing? Where is cosine square root of 3 over 2? There's 2 options for cosine being square root of 3 over 2, and that is at pi over 6 and when it's 11 pi over 6, right? So those are our 2 options there, correct? So here's what you got. Now, cosine 3x, oops, not pi, 3 pi equals those 2 assumptions. So how do I solve? What do I have to do? Well, I have to do something very simple. And that is that I would take the 3 and divide it. So really what that's going to be is pi over 18, 11 pi over 18, okay? Now, remember, if I want to get multiple rotations, it's pi over 18 plus n 2 pi. So what it is every time I go around, I add 2 pi to it. And that's where we would get all of our multiple answers. And so if they say find primary solutions, you'll find a bunch of solutions for that. If you go n, 1, 2, and 3, you'll get it up to 35 pi over pi, okay? So that's how you would do 5.3, solving these problems. Hopefully this will help you. Good luck.